Welcome back. Joining us now on Lunchtime Agenda, Labor MP Kelvin Thomson and Liberal MP Andrew Laming. Thank you both for your time this afternoon. First to you, Andrew Laming, as we just heard there from Jennifer Westacott, business is concerned about the Clive Palmer amendment to the carbon tax repeal. This is after yesterday a whole lot of chaos and confusion, deals attempted to be done in the corridors outside the Senate. Is this really the way that you expected the government would be running public policy after promising that the adults were back in charge?
Well, it's certainly precisely how crossbenchers will always operate, particularly at the start of a Senate term. We'll see a lot of, chest oiling and, chest beating and muscle flexing from these crossbenchers until they find their feet. That's to be expected. But, David, this is a blink of an eye legislatively, and I anticipate these couple of weeks' delays, even though they're costing $11 million a day to Australian industry until this tax is repealed. We'll get through this. We are utterly determined, and that's exactly the kind of government Australia wanted.
Do you think, perhaps I'll ask, who do you blame for the shenanigans yesterday?
Look, it's not a matter of blaming. These are brand new, freshly minted crossbenchers. Clive Palmer, for instance, a former businessman, looking for a return on investment for his, team that he's put into Parliament. He wants headlines. He needs some form of disruptive impact. He needs every day the story to be about him. That's his intention. That's not new for government. They've dealt with crossbenchers before. They've dealt with Queensland crossbenchers in particular before. This is the Australian political system. It's like a sailor complaining about the seas. That can be managed. We can negotiate. They are not unreasonable people, and we will get to a solution. And it won't be, when you think about it and look back, a terribly long time in getting it done.
Kelvin Thomson, it is almost certain that the carbon tax will be repealed next week. No thanks to Labor yesterday, because it wasn't just the crossbenchers that denied the government the numbers in the Senate. It was also 25 Labor senators, and that was after the clearest of mandates at the last election that that's what Tony Abbott intended to do, get rid of the carbon tax.
David, we are doing what we told voters what we would do prior to the election, and that is voting in support of an emissions trading regime, in support of a price on carbon, which we believe is absolutely necessary to drive the transition towards renewable energy. And indeed, Clive Palmer is doing exactly what a small Senate party should be doing, and that is keeping the bastards honest. They said they were going to reduce electricity prices and gas prices. Tony Abbott talked about 9% cut on electricity prices, 7% cut on gas prices, $200 off the average household electricity bill, $70 off the average gas bill. It is appropriate that they are held to account, and Clive Palmer has every right to be suspicious of this government, which after all promised no cuts in health, education, pensions and the like, and went on to systematically break each of those promises.
Do you, Kelvin Thomson, have similar concerns to what we just heard from Jennifer Westacott about possible compliance costs of Clive Palmer's amendment, and how will Labor support on, or what's Labor's view on that amendment itself?
Well, I think that the first point is, if you've got the Business Council in there essentially saying that they don't want those amendments and they're concerned about compliance issues, given the Business Council and other business groups' level of control over the Liberal Party, you wouldn't have a snowflake's chance in hell of seeing the carbon price changes pass through to consumers unless you've got legislative provisions in place of the kind that Clive Palmer is suggesting. Just yesterday we saw 4 power companies going to the New South Wales power companies going to the Australian Energy Regulator asking to increase their power prices, not reduce them. So clearly, unless you've got some kind of legislative framework in place, consumers are never going to see these reductions in electricity and gas prices which the Liberal Party promised them prior to the election.
I want to play you a comment from Palmer United Party Senator Jackie Lambie from the project on Channel 10 last night. Take a look at this.
You want to come into the kennel with the pups, be prepared to be chewed up and spat back out. But you know what? Stop these silly games. That's not what we're here for.
Andrew, what's your view of Clive Palmer and his senators?
Look, they play an utterly legitimate role. They are elected by the Australian people. We would be communicating with them with great respect and understanding. Obviously, I'm not intimately involved in those negotiations while the House of Reps aren't sitting, but I'm very confident that we'll resolve this. And I know that for detractors of the current Senate, it's exciting, perversely, to watch the chaos, but in reality, I'm confident we can get this tax repealed. It was the #1 promise of the coalition government and Tony Abbott, and if this takes a week or 2 weeks, I don't see a problem. What Australians want to see is that there's ultimately 3 years from now that a responsible trajectory has been restored to the Australian economy, and obviously the populist approach of PUP and Clive Palmer in particular to handpick areas where he thinks he can gain a headline by opposing will be the greater challenge. But it's not a new challenge, David, and it's one I'm sure we can negotiate.
OK, I just want to finish on the issue of asylum seekers, because we've seen today Lieutenant General Angus Campbell in a Senate hearing here in Canberra today, again refusing to answer questions regarding those 153 asylum seekers that we know through the High Court are being held aboard a customs vessel. Now, Andrew Laming, without going into the operational details, does the government know the fate of these 153 asylum seekers? Because we know they exist, we know they're on the high seas. Does the government know what's going to happen to them?
Well, it's self-evident from that information released that we are looking after their well-being. It's self-evident that they're now safe. It's self-evident that we have always and will continue to adhere to both international and domestic obligations, that we will be absolutely and rigorously adhering to our convention requirements that we are signed up to. And again, I think that you find opponents to the coalition's very effective approach delighting in the schadenfreude of watching our borders being tested. I don't think there's anything to rejoice about.
But does the government know where they'll end up?
Well, the government is currently in the process of dealing with threats as they arise, and I can't put a precise time on whether we know where person X or Y will end up. I mean, that's exactly what our highly trained, highly respected and extremely effective border control staff are doing right now. Navy, Customs, that's their job. They're paid to do it. They've done it in an exemplary fashion. Governments come and go, but these frontline forces are doing an incredible job. Let's face it, we've replaced a government that could not fix this problem with a government that will fix it, and it's that kind of determination Australians voted for, and they're seeing it in action this week.
Kelvin Thomson, we've only got about 30 seconds left. A response to that and what Labor would do with the 153 asylum seekers?
Well, David, we've got a remarkable situation with an immigration minister who will talk about boats indefinitely, provided there are none, but as soon as any boats arrive, he refuses to talk about it. The government needs to be transparent. In the absence of reliable information, we get all sorts of things being run out, some of which are true, some of which are not. What we need in the first place from this government is reliable, verifiable information.
Kelvin Thomson, Andrew Laming, we are out of time. Thank you very much for joining us on Lunchtime Agenda.
Thanks, David.
Well, in the race for Indonesian President, Joko Widodo is ahead in most of the polls, but his opponent, Prabowo Subianto, has insisted he's actually ahead in the real count of votes, accusing opponents of trying to hijack democracy. To take us through what is a bizarre presidential result, I spoke earlier to Natalie Samby from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute.